when the pandemic hit and my multi-million dollar business went to zero
Mm,
because we're in events and entertainment,
right.
I immediately thought, okay, okay, if I have to, which is irrational, but it was the first thought I had. I'm like, okay, cardboard, bring my mattress. I can sleep in this store doorway.
Natasha, I'm so happy that you're here.
Thank you. Very nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to have you. You have quite an inspirational story. I think a lot of people, well, a lot of people maybe not able to relate to it directly because we haven't gone through the same things as you have. But I think just that spirit of tenacity and follow through, showing up for yourself is what a lot of people can relate to. And some of us need more inspiration in that way. So I'm glad to talk to you. Now, Natasha, tell me what you're up to right now before we get into a little bit of your story. Why don't you?
Yes. So right now, it's kind of it's a very exciting time for me. I have owned my core business, Entire Productions, for over 20 years.
Mm,
And for the last five, my dream was to work on it instead of in it day to day. And that was really hard for me because it was such a passion project. And I didn't start the business just to sell or make an exit. So it was a mind construct that I had to get over. I've been working on my business about 20%. And yesterday I was able to level up another gal on my team to take over some general management duties. I don't know what that makes me now, 15% of working on the business. I have no idea. I'll let you know. But my big focus right now is the launching and publishing of my memoir, which I don't know what I was thinking. I just let it all, I'm the most vulnerable
you let it
I've
all out.
ever been.
Mm,
Um, and now I'm not second guessing myself, but I'm like, wow, thinking about it, writing it,
yeah.
that's one thing. Having people read it and then comment on it, wow, that's another thing.
Yeah, that's interesting. I remember, it's very vulnerable when you put your art out there and anymore with so much input, the Instagram stories and the reels and the TikToks, like everything kind of has a life, but you can also delete it real quickly if you need, or they just
Yeah.
last 24 hours. So when you put something out into the world that's going to be there for perpetuity, it is extremely nerve-wracking. I remember when I put out my first book, and there's some personal stories in there, a lot of personal information, that feeling of being judged and people not quite understanding and misinterpreting it and all that is there. But there's also another beautiful thing that happens, which I think is an opening, a surrendering to, this is just what is. This is my perspective right now, and accepting those parts of ourselves that we're human and we're sharing for the reasons that you needed to share. Sounds like it was cathartic for you.
Yes.
Yeah, and I look forward to reading it. So for those who are just tuning in or didn't catch the intro, Natasha is an entrepreneur, and she's built up, as she said, a very thriving business in San Francisco that has been around for 20 plus years, and is a mother, and comes from what I would say trauma. And I want to talk about that today and how you moved through your own trauma and that state of essentially being homeless to creating a Fortune 5,000 company, I believe you call it, and or believe that it is. And then now sharing your story about, marriage and family and being on your own and that tenacity. So tell us a little bit about your background when you found yourself homeless. I know that there's a better word for that, and I
No, I mean,
apologize, I
it
can't
is,
remember
it's,
what it is.
no, it's okay. So, I grew up in a very dysfunctional family. So many people have, right? That is where there's a pretty common denominator.
Mhm.
I was born in 71. So, the 70s and 80s we didn't have Oprah. We didn't have the resources and access to help, figure out how to live life. And I was treated not well by my mother. And quite honestly, my dad, who was an amazing father in every way you could think of, wasn't able to protect me from her.
Mm.
And that was really, that was really hard. And when I was 16 on Christmas Day, I finally pulled the trigger to call 911 when my mother, she'd always threatened to kill me my entire life, and not just, I'm going to kill you, like out of frustration, like out of mental illness. And
Mm.
I ended up at a youth shelter for homeless kids. And a lot of the kids there were there because they'd run away, or they were addicted to drugs or alcohol, or many different reasons. But what I found out was I was actually deemed by the state of Iowa, where I lived, as an abandoned child.
Oh, wow. And what about your
So
father though, during this time?
he took me there.
Oh,
And so the story is, on Christmas Day, when my mother was really acting out and chasing me around with a butcher knife, the police came. And again, in the 80s, unless you are gushing with blood or there's a bone broken, they can't help you. They didn't help you. But they gave my dad a card that said, Youth Emergency Shelter Service. If you feel like she's in danger, you can take her there. And he did.
wow.
So I was there. There was talk of foster care. And I was like, not happening. I'm a classically trained violinist. I'm studying with this professor at the university. So there were a lot of ironies, right? There are not a whole lot of classically trained studying with a professor at a university child and a youth shelter.
Mhm.
It didn't make a whole lot of sense, but I got out of there and have been on my own ever since.
How did you get out?
By reading this law book in the office that showed me that I wasn't sort of in jail, which is kind of how it felt, that I could leave there. And in Iowa, there was no formal emancipation law, but I was basically emancipated. So I left. I lived with my grandmother for a short time. Then I was on my own in an apartment, in a basement apartment, and going to high school, working full time at night.
Mm. So you really kind of brought yourself up in those teenage years, it sounds like. Well, when I hear the word homeless, I guess I, like a lot of people would, equate that to actually living on the streets. And was that
Right.
true for you?
No,
Okay.
nope.
Okay. So
No,
you,
but I will tell you, I'm mentally prepared. When the pandemic hit and my multi-million dollar business went to zero,
mm,
because we're in events and entertainment,
right.
I immediately thought, okay, if I have to, which is irrational, but it was the first thought I had. I'm like, okay, cardboard, bring my mattress. I can sleep in this store doorway.
Mhm.
Now, I've never had to do that. So it's a little dramatic thinking, but it is survival mode, right? And it's PTSD to a certain what I wasn't recalling was all the skills that I had.
Right. Well, I think that's what happens when we have had trauma in our lives. A lot of us function out of survival mode constantly. And a lot of us are more prepared for a major catastrophe than we are prepared for something to go really well. And we have that mentality of when the shoe's going to drop and when there's no more food available. And as you
Yep.
said, if I have to, here's what I'll do.
Yep.
And some people are utterly prepared for that. I think we should all be prepared for that a little bit, but as you just said, we have to remember that, well, individually, hopefully, the more self-healing work that we do and the more tools that we accumulate in our lives, we have those resources, but spiritually and remembering who we are and the connection to divine source and resources of all things and the oneness, we are living in a state of support and abundance.
Yeah.
So,
I found it interesting yesterday. A lot of amazing things came to fruition all in a row. And it was so stressful for me because there was excitement,
mhm.
but I'm my best self in a challenge.
Mm, yeah.
And I don't know how to feel. Someone was like, take this time to celebrate. I'm like, celebrate? Like, how, what?
What do you do then?
No. Yeah. No, I'm used to fighting my way through.
Yeah, I
So
can
it's,
relate to you. There's so much. Yeah, I think a
yeah.
lot of people can. It's
Yeah.
and to the point where I enjoy challenges. Do you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do too. And it kind of reinvigorates that moxie within of
Yes.
who I am and I can do this. But
Yeah.
again, some of that is tied to, circumstances where you had to do it. I'm
Right.
interested, do you have a relationship with your father, or did you have a relationship with your father after that incident and that time period?
Yeah, so I would say the few years after that until my parents got divorced right after I was in let's see after I graduated from high school, he kicked into, I think that was freedom. I mean, obviously it was freedom from him for him. And he just turbocharged himself into the best person he could possibly become, into the best father for me and my two younger brothers. And never did I hear him say, I'm going to make this up to you. That wasn't something, but we saw it happening and we
Mm,
didn't realize that that was happening. But as I look back, oh, he not only made up for it, but then some. And still
wow.
to this day, I mean, I was on a bike ride with him. He was kicking my butt. Not that we were racing, but he's 77 and it was fun. I felt like we were two kids out exploring the island
Mm,
of Alameda.
that's great. You had so much support in one way, at
Yeah.
least.
Yeah.
And is your mother still around, or?
She is. She is very near to where I live. I actually helped bring her out here from Des Moines about 7, 8 years ago because my brothers are tending to her. They're not really taking care of her, but they were having to go back and forth, and it was a stress for them. And she was about to lose her home, and she quite honestly could have been on the streets. And my I was trying to protect my brothers
Mm.
from having to deal with that. So I don't have a relationship with her now. I have on and off since that time, but it's better for my mental health not to.
Yeah, it's a really hard decision to make. And I'm glad that we're having this conversation, because especially when we're traumatized from a parent or sibling or someone in our life that has mental illness, the that struggle between wanting to care for them and relate to them and love them and be loyal to them and be in a relationship with them, versus sometimes the difficult decision of, this isn't what's healthy for me. This isn't good for me. And there's a lot of guilt that goes on behind that. I should be doing this, and she can't help it or he can't help it. And they're doing the best they can. And I need to be the one to pick up all the pieces. How did you come through that? I'm sure you experienced at different times the guilt of being the good daughter.
Sometimes I watch TV shows or read books or see other instances where I'm like, well, why isn't that? Oh, why isn't it? Because you have to put yourself in their shoes. I feel more guilty and bad for my brothers because I feel like I'm placing or dispersing the onus of responsibility to them.
Mm.
And so I don't feel as much responsibility to my mother, but it's more to my brothers who are sort of taking over what may have been my portion of um, how to care for her.
And how do you manage that within yourself?
Well, I make sure that I check in with them. They don't really say much to me because they don't want to stir the pot, but I help them emotionally supportive. I give them, ideas. Sometimes I don't give them money for her, but I give them, one of my brothers spends quite a few hours a week, right? And he's not getting the support from anybody else. And so I'm like, hey, I'm just going to contribute to your life. What you do with it, even if he spends it all on her, his choice.
Okay.
If he spends it all on himself, if he gives it away to other people, it doesn't matter. It's not my business.
Hmm. Right. Well, it
Mhm.
sounds like you have pretty healthy boundaries, which are necessary. And
Well, at 51, I finally figured them out.
yeah,
Oh, I'm not 51 yet, almost 51.
yeah, I'm almost 50. I'm right behind you. So yeah, it can take a while, and to establish the boundaries in a way that are healthy for you, where they're not being subjugated to constant guilt, constant shame, constant
Yeah,
second guessing, constant breaking your own boundaries, and just, this
I
is the
don't
way
have
I
that
do.
at all.
Good.
Mm-mm,
That's
mm-mm.
awesome. So you were out on your own as a young person and going from here to there. How did you come to the place in your life? Well, I guess it was when you were in your 30s, you started your business that you have now, the events and marketing business. But how did you come to a place to be able to grow a business into a multi-million dollar establishment?
I started it out by being the service and the product. And that means that I was performing for social and corporate events as a violinist and as a jazz vocalist. Then, when I was booked or overbooked, I would bring in other groups that were similar to me. So I really started small, didn't have a business license. I didn't know I needed one. Um, and then as I got a little bit more into that, and my daughter went into kindergarten, someone recognized in me something, and their recognition of me was actually much bigger than what my ability was at that time, but I grew into it. I said yes. I said yes. So I faked it until I made it so.
Mhm.
Right. So that year I landed $100,000 account from that person. And it's an account I still have today, which
Wow.
is it's a huge milestone, right? 20, 21 years. The same client, they just emailed me yesterday and said, let's get the programming done. And it wasn't really, I was building a lifestyle business, not knowing that verbiage. Until my daughter was in high school, it never occurred to me to scale and grow. My focus was on performing, doing CDs, doing performances, doing some teaching. I taught musicians how to publicize themselves and make money. But in 2015, a light bulb went off, and I took this class that was sponsored by Goldman Sachs called the 10,000 Small Businesses. And from that course, along with some advisors and mentors, my business grew by 65%.
Oh,
And
wow.
then it kept growing at that level. So, right now I'm teaching entrepreneurs how to scale and grow their businesses. And what I love to say is, listen, you want to hack? You want to learn the shortcut? I'll tell you the shortcut. Read the book, take the class, right? Emulate before you create your own way. And if I had done that, I'd probably have $100 million business today. I don't regret the way I did it,
Yeah.
but there's pieces of me that said, why did you think you had to make it all up yourself those first 11, 12 years?
Right.
I loved how people were saying, you're so amazing. You're doing this all on your own. You don't have a business degree. And I'm like, yeah, I'm so cool. Like internally,
Uh-huh.
I would have been so much more cool had I known the tried and true methods of building a business.
Yeah, I hear you. And I want to, just remind you and myself and all of us, like it's all part of your story. It's all part of your journey. And
Yes,
if you were just focused on making the money, and if you were just focused on, growing this humongous business, then you wouldn't have these personal elements that were fulfilled, and the validation and all the pieces that you probably needed to pick up and gather from your teenage years and your young 20s and make
absolutely.
to feel your
Yeah.
own worth. So I don't
Yep.
think the money has anything to do with it,
No,
really.
I mean, just making a modest living was extremely satisfying to me because I was doing what I loved to do.
Mm.
And it didn't occur to me that I needed more money. I didn't actually need
Right. That's the thing. Do you need
it.
it? We have these milestones, this idea of how we're going to live with so much money. But when we
Yeah.
break it down, it's like, I don't even know what I would do with that much money. I don't know what these
Right.
people do with
Mhm.
just hordes of money. It's just so unnecessary. But I know that, we all want to feel safe. That's part of the foundation,
Right.
having, some stability in our lives. So this event company that you have now, I'm assuming that you have other performers and other
Mhm.
entertainers and other people show up at galas and
Mhm.
fundraisers and all kinds of different events.
Yes, I don't perform for these events any longer. At one point, I stopped playing the violin for them. And then another point, I stopped singing for them, and really then just focused on my own performance career where I would do ticketed like Monterey Jazz Festival or, in concert. We have over 3,000 artists. We have aerialists, headline bands, um, musicians, DJs, face painters, full body painters. They're just so over the top amazing. And the kinds of events we do are really over the top, artistic, creative, performance based. So when somebody is celebrating or launching a product, and our core business is Fortune 500 companies, they have a nice budget. So we can just roll out the red carpet, lights,
Right.
cameras, action, that kind of
Right.
thing. So it's really fulfilling. It's really fun. Some of the things that we say on a day-to-day basis, if you overheard them, you would be like, what are they talking about? I'm going to give you a case in point. We had someone that wanted to do an under the sea event, right?
Mm.
So lots of sea creatures. And literally this conversation happened in my office. Oh, our performer, that's the lobster with the beautiful lobster costume, she's pregnant and she's not willing to share her lobster costume with anyone else. Does anyone know another lobster performer?
Wow. Yeah,
Is
that's
that a thing? Like, that isn't normal life.
but it's fun and it's a life you created, and that's the most
Yes.
important. Yeah. Well, I'm gonna put you on the spot here a little bit because I
Okay.
like to hear, from personal from people who have achieved some of their dreams and just, figured out a path of healing and living your best self. I know you're sharing, in your new book, Relentless, coming out about your personal journey. But if you were to have access, which I believe we do, to your inner child who
Mm,
was maybe 10 years old, 8 or 10 years old,
mhm,
what do you feel like she would say to you now, or what does she still need from you?
mhm,
And also, what do you feel like you've accomplished with her in the course of your career?
mhm. I think she needs to feel safe, and she wants to know why she has to live the way she does.
Mm,
And why can't she have a life that's similar to the friends that she has in her neighborhood? And even though those families aren't necessarily perfect, they're safe and they're loved and they're shown love. And she can hear their parents saying, hey, hon, it's time for dinner. Come in.
mhm,
And what she still needs from me, which is very apparent, as my 26-year-old daughter would say if she were sitting next to me, I still need that reinforcement from the outside world, even though it looks like I'm completely self sufficient and very independent. Um, I do still crave those outside um, accolades.
mhm,
And I know that when I stop needing that, that I've maybe more arrived, but I'm not there yet.
mm. That's okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. Because when I look at a person like yourself bio, for example, and
Mhm.
all the things,
It's
and
pretty hardcore, isn't it?
yeah, and mine too, it's like we can just go knock this,
Yeah.
make all the bullet points. And it's there's a lot of different ways we can look at it all. And one of those ways is awe and respect and
Mhm.
inspiration, and also recognizing there's that need within to achieve and to be seen and to do and to um and that that doesn't negate the value of what we're here to say and to do by any means, and
Mhm.
thankfully you've had that drive within you, because look at all the joy and the experiences you brought to people across the
Yeah.
country, and it's been amazing, I'm sure. So I applaud you for that.
Thank you.
Secondly, I don't know if you'll do this because I didn't mention this at all in the email, but this is something that cannot go in your book.
Okay.
Tell me your favorite song that you
Oh, my
perform,
favorite song that I perform.
or your
No,
favorite
I'll
song.
tell you.
Uh-huh.
My favorite song is a song that I wrote for my daughter Bennett. Sorry, I have to like wipe tears now.
Sorry.
It's okay. It's a song called Over the Moon.
Ah.
And it's a song, it's a love letter to her. And the first line is, I was only 25. I barely knew what it took to survive. Then you came along and I came alive.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Now to put you on the spot a little more, can you sing? Can you sing a little bar for us?
Yeah. I was only 25. I barely knew what it took to survive. Then you came along and I came alive. with your curly black hair and the most intense stare. You were born so aware.
That is beautiful. What a beautiful voice and song. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So through your journey, you had a child, and your only child, correct? Your daughter?
I actually, and this is in the book, my book, by the way, with all the trigger warnings that I was
Mm.
told that I should have, I was like, oh my God, if I deduce my life to trigger warnings, what a saga.
Yeah.
But I actually had a baby boy named Aiden,
Mm.
who at 9 months, 8.5 pounds, was born stillborn.
Oh,
And the biggest tragedy that I see from that is my daughter and my dad's anticipation for this
mm.
little boy. That's the most heartbreaking thing to reflect on.
Wow. I'm sure.
So, yeah, my daughter was 9 at the time, and you can imagine that
Oh, yeah.
anticipation and excitement.
Oh, oh. Do you all still celebrate Aiden, and is he part of your lives?
Yes, yes. My daughter just went to visit him on in the graveside a few months ago, and March 4th was his birthday,
Mm.
so it's coming up.
Yeah. Oh, that's
Yeah,
beautiful. And I'm sorry for your loss.
yeah. Thank you.
That's really difficult. Um, well, after that, are you still married?
No,
Okay.
happily not.
Happily not.
Yeah.
Well, I'm curious, after going through a marriage and the children and starting your own business, what was it that took you away from the marriage? Was it an unhealthy situation?
Yeah. So Bennett's dad, I was 20 when I met him. He was 29.
Mm.
And if you roll back the years, you can see I was on my own at 16. So at age 20, I felt a
30.
decade older,
Yeah.
right? But I wasn't prepared. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know who I was going to become. I had no idea. And so we weren't aligned at
Mhm.
all. And to this day, he's a fine person. He's an architect, but he has the speed that is so in low gear, like so low gear. And I know opposites can attract, but that was not going to work for me. Like
Mhm.
I was a shooting star and nothing was going to stop me. But at 20, and then I married him at 23 and we divorced when I was 27. There was, there was no way for me to know that.
Yeah.
And he's remained in Bennett's life. And, he was a good dad in the ways that he was a good dad. He read her all the Harry Potter books. I'm not reading her a Harry Potter book,
Mhm.
but when I had her, I had her. And so if you ask her today, I mean, we have an incredible relationship, and a lot, I think, is because when I was with her, I was 100% there.
Right. Yeah. That's great, and I'm glad she does still have the presence of her father. So
Yes.
you truly, you were a single mother and then started this venture on
Yep.
your own
Yep.
and kept it all together. I can see why now you would say, I only want to be a 20% or 15%, working on the business. It gets tiresome, and this
It's
time
exhausting.
it's exhausting. And, I feel similarly coming to a new age in my life. This new era, I think, in our lives, we grow into the space and we need something different. You need something
Very
different
much.
when you're 50, 51, 55 than you needed when you were 25. And so
Yes. And I
it's,
know we have some time, right? We have some time,
yeah.
but for me, I feel like I'm racing the clock now.
Uh, yeah.
And it's invigorating, it's exciting, it's also so exhausting. And so I need to remind myself, get off your chair and go outside. I live 40 feet from the water. Go
Uh,
take a walk, put your kayak in. So
yeah.
sometimes I have to like wag my finger at myself.
Yeah, I know. It's true for all of us. We have to
Mhm.
live our full life every day. We put off so many things. Most of the time we put off the fun things. It's like, I can't wait
Exactly.
for the vacation, or I can't wait to go kayaking or canoeing. I can't wait for
Yeah.
this. But why not do it right now?
Right.
So I think that's good advice, sound advice for everyone, whether you're coming off of a full career or not. Is your business and your company starting to balance out after the pandemic? Are you feeling a little more safe that way?
Well, we had to go to virtual events. And I will say, When I said earlier, I'm my best self when I'm in a challenge. My business went to zero, but 2 weeks later, I came up with this idea to save the company. I think my whole team was like, oh my God, she's really lost it. But it, in fact, saved the company. And in the last 2 years, we've produced over 400 virtual events.
Oh my goodness.
So we're poised to double when in-person events come back, because we have this whole new business segment that we never had before.
Wow. That's impressive. Good for you. Yeah, we've all had to pivot and shift. And,
Mhm.
some of us took a little break. Some of us geared into, I have to do something to survive here.
Yeah.
And it
I was
sounds
on
like,
full survival mode.
yeah, I believe me, I understand. And now knowing you a little bit more, I can only imagine. Yeah. Well, I love your perseverance and your persistence, your honesty. And I look forward to seeing how your book does. When do you think it'll be released?
March 22nd.
Oh, interesting.
It's done. I just saw the cover and the back cover, and it's as good as the cover. Like, how you say you can't judge a book by a cover? Yes, you can.
Yeah.
Like, and that's what people do. And so I'm very proud of the book cover, and I think it will draw the people that need to read it.
That's great. Well,
Mhm.
good luck with that. Good luck with the
Thank you.
launch.
Thank
Yes.
you.
And so much. And for the coming days and years of your own life, is there anything new that you're looking forward to? Are you looking for a new relationship, or are you in one, or are there other business ventures?
Yeah. Okay. So you caught me. I have a lot of things figured out.
Uh-huh.
And there are a couple of big ones that I need to overcome, some thoughts and some habits. And one of them is letting someone else
Mm,
into my life in that intimate space and being the best person that I've become and maintaining that. And, I've had a challenge with relationships where I wanted them to grow into the best possible version of themselves. And if they were just fine being where they were, that wasn't good enough for me.
mm,
And that's my problem.
mm.
So you just opened up a Pandora's box. And I think we have podcast episode number 2 coming up on that one. But yes,
Acceptance.
yeah,
Acceptance.
I
Yes.
need to figure that out. I want to figure that out.
Okay. Well, for all those who are listening, we have a viable candidate here of love and life partnership available in San Francisco, a beautiful woman named Natasha. And maybe I'll be the matchmaker. Who knows? Thank you so much for being on the show, Natasha. And we'll keep an eye out for your book. And I wish nothing but more success with your work and your healing and your own journey.
Thank you. This was really just an incredible experience with you.
Thank you. Thanks very much. We'll be in touch soon.